Welcome to the Blue is the New White podcast. Thanks for joining us this week. We've got a really awesome guest for you today. His name is Ray Clark. He is the head of sales for Schedule Engine. For those of you that don't know what Schedule Engine is, it's, well, I can't really explain it very well, but it is definitely advancing the service industry forward by the use of technology. So definitely listen to the episode. Ray explains it very, very well, probably better, actually absolutely better than I ever could. So I won't even try. I'll just let you listen to the episode on there. But Ray has had an interesting journey and a very good perspective on the skilled trades as a whole. He respected the trades very much through high school, did end up going to college and for, chemical engineering. And from there, he went to work for Carrier, the HVAC manufacturer, Carrier. So he got his start there in the HVAC world, and then from there went into the technology sector of the industry with Schedule Engine, and just has a world of insight into how the trades have allowed him the kind of success that he really enjoys on a daily basis. So I think you guys are going to enjoy this episode a lot. Please remember, we don't monetize this show. Everything is out of pocket here. So the best thing that you can do for us is share this episode, rate this episode, tell a friend, and really just push it for us because word of mouth is how we grow, how we expand, and how we get this message out to everybody who needs to hear it. So thank you again for listening. And for continuing to listen. Enjoy this week's episode and enjoy. All right, today we have Ray Clark from Schedule Engine. Ray, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. And why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. First and foremost, big fan. Appreciate you having me on the show today. And we'll probably get into a little bit of how we met each other and how things move pretty quickly. But yeah, my name's Ray Clark, formerly head of sales with Schedule Engine, which is essentially a startup technology company that's helping contractors modernize their customer experience. But head of sales, my background, which we'll get into, worked some construction in the past, studied engineering, got to educate myself on the business side of things, and really just fascinated by consumer psychology trends and where we see the industry and customers' expectations going. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
All right, cool. Well, let's really dig a little deeper. Where'd you grow up, man?
Grew up in Jersey. So if you can hear by how fast I talk, that's one thing I'm always trying to slow myself down. But I grew up in New Jersey, currently quarantined in New Jersey. My fiance and I, before really coronavirus struck, were right in Manhattan. She had a job up there. And with everything, we've kind of moved out to the suburbs of Jersey, the Jersey Shore area, but enjoying my fix of pizza and bagels while I'm out here. But yeah, grew up in New Jersey.
Oh, okay, very cool. So what were you like in high school? Is it like you said you've done some construction, you got into engineering? Is that something you always wanted to do, or how'd that come about?
Yeah, so high school was probably pretty common to a lot of people. Big ice hockey player, ice hockey, football, lacrosse. Typical sports, love the competition, the drive there. And really what first kind of got me down this path, chemistry. I was pretty good at chemistry, I found. Both my parents were engineers, and they were letting me know, well, if you're going to go down a path, study chemistry or study chemical engineering, they both kind of nudged me along this way of chemical engineering. But with engineering in general, I always loved working with my hands. During the summers, I'd come out of Jersey, I'd go to Staten Island, New York, and probably through summers in high school and summers through college when I was studying. Every summer I'd work construction, going out to like Global Container Terminal, Staten Island Terminal, doing a lot of construction, excavation work. So early on, like the engineering side of it, was fascinated by a lot of the construction. And ultimately that kind of got my feet wet and got me to start thinking. But yeah, that's a little bit about how high school started for me.
Oh, okay. So you, through high school, probably didn't have the same perception as a lot of kids do these days that blue collar work is menial, right? It sounds like you kind of had a better understanding at that time than a lot of the young people that I talk to today.
Yeah, I'll be really transparent, Josh. I had an appreciation for the work and I loved it. I was fascinated, from building tree houses with my dad growing up. I enjoyed working with my hands, but again, to be transparent, it was never positioned to me that the trades were an option, right? Meeting with guidance counselors. The conversation was always, college degree. And looking back, I didn't feel that I had or even was educated on what a different career path could be. So looking back now and seeing a lot of reinvestment in the trades, really just financial salaries and income, what the differences could be. I'm happy we're making progress, but 15 years ago, whenever that time was, it just wasn't even an option.
Right. No, I hear you on that. It was the same experience for me in high school. No one ever really explained what it was. And, I say a lot, it wasn't like people outwardly bashed the trades. I mean, you have the negative stereotypes and stuff like that you see on TV, and in the media. But in high school, it just wasn't really talked about at all. It was kind of almost ignored, which in a way I think might be worse, because there's just zero attention being paid in that direction. And so it wasn't until well after high school that, I understood even what an HVAC technician was. Or let alone, how much money and opportunity there was, in a career path like this. So, but I hear that just time and time and time again. It's actually pretty rare that I hear anybody had, been taught about this kind of stuff in high school, no matter if they were in high school last year or if they were in high school 25 years ago. It's just one of those things that I think has been progressively being pushed aside for, like you said, college education by guidance counselors and teachers and things like that.
Yeah. And so I know you're in Phoenix, Arizona now. Is that where you went to high school? Did you grow up on the West Coast or kind of Southwest?
No, I actually grew up in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Yeah. So I'm a Midwest guy. I was born in California, but when I was really young, moved out to Kenosha, Wisconsin. Spent most of my years out there, all through elementary school to high school. And then after I got out of high school, I moved back to California. My whole family was in the stunt industry. So, my dad was a stuntman for a while. My mom, my grandfather, everybody were stunt people. So that was my chosen path, right?
That's awesome. I did see that on your LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I was dying to fit that into the conversation. So you beat me to it.
Yeah. So it was... it was fun, but it was really an ego thing at that point. In high school, growing up in Kenosha, Wisconsin, I was the only one that, ever really looked into a camera professionally for a living, let alone, lit myself on fire and jumped off buildings. But at the end of the day, I was good at that stuff. But, the main satisfaction I got out of it was being able to tell people I did it. At the end of the day, it just wasn't my idea of success. So, from there, then I moved out to Arizona to work with my dad here at Windy City when he just a few years after he first started it. So he started in 2003. I came out in 2008, and the rest is history.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate that.
So after high school, then you went to college?
Correct.
What'd you go to college for? Engineering, you said?
Yeah, so technically for chemical engineering, engineering, a lot of exposure to a lot of friends in mechanical, and your first 2 years, you're getting the general discipline and jack of all trades engineering, and then gradually kind of went into chemical. And it's funny, right? I'll continue to talk about how my path led me on your podcast today, but everything from a chemical engineering lab where I'm learning about the refrigeration cycle, like all these kind of random experiences that call them happenstance, call it what you not, kind of contributed to, ultimately getting into my first job after college and continuing to be in the trades. But as far as it continues to go, studied engineering for the same reasons I mentioned in high school. And as far as like my exposure into the industry, which is $1 trillion, right, home services industry, was one little lab about the refrigeration cycle, which was isolated. And I still had no idea that really this ginormous industry existed.
Wow, that is interesting. Going to college for engineering, and it was just that one little thing that kind of pivoted. It sounds like your entire career. So let's talk about your college experience a little bit. What was the biggest takeaway that you had from college?
Yeah, so as mentioned before, kind of college seemed to be, it was what everyone did. The option was you're going to apply at all these different colleges, go there. So I went to Villanova, which was right outside Philly. My mom was an alma mater there, which certainly influenced my decision. But went to college, enjoyed, like I'm sure all young adults do, having some of that freedom, autonomy. But for a lot of college, so I played ice hockey my first year or two out there, continued to be active in fraternity, things like club lacrosse. The biggest thing that I got out of it, I'm not directly applying the discipline or the curriculum of chemical engineering to my job today, but some of that time management skill was certainly one thing I picked up. When you're on your own, trying to walk the balance of having fun with your friends, other outside, extracurricular activities like sports, and still maintaining and being on the dean's list for engineering. Like, could I tell you what chemical reactor engineering was about, Josh? No, but I can tell you I created a process. I knew how to study, and I ultimately love that kind of problem solving and figuring out what's the process to achieve these results.
Interesting. Yeah. And that's something I hear quite a bit when I talk to people about their college experiences, that there are legitimate takeaways from college. And, I'm finding that there's certain groups, right? There's people who went to college with absolutely no idea what they wanted to do with the rest of their life, but they went to college because that was what everybody said. Hey, figure it out once you get there. Just take your core classes and the rest will work itself out. And, those people, I feel like, when I talk to them, they struggle the most with, maybe they graduated, got their degree, but they had a hard time finding, a job, because really at the end of the day, they just didn't know what they wanted to do. So, and they had hoped that a college career would help them figure that out. And some did, some didn't. But, I think I read a statistic that a third of college graduates don't even start their career until they're 30 years old, approximately 30 years old. And I'm seeing it more and more as I talk to people. But my point in that is that, there are some legitimate takeaways from college aside from, the degree and the education. Like you said, with time management, I've also heard, the friends that you make with the network that you build in college and stuff like that. So just really an interesting perspective, that you have on college. So if you don't mind me asking, were you on a scholarship, or did you have to take out loans, or how'd that work?
Yeah, combination. So I had some grants and some minor scholarships, and then the others student loans, right? So, I was fortunate. I was able to partially have some of that accounted for, but you bring student loans into the picture. The amount of friends I have right now, friends for life. So with any experience, my intention is not to speak negatively on college, but
of course,
by the same means, when you think about all the money that is being invested. And, my brother who studied accounting, he doesn't want to do anything accounting related. So you pay so much money for these degrees, and you think about student loans, and you ask yourself the right questions after that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's not a knock on college. It's really an ROI question, right? It's what's the actual return on investment, and how can we maximize that? Because, college education, higher education of any kind is good. You just need to make sure that, it can be applied to your everyday life. And what I tell people is, don't go to college for the degree, go to college for the education. Really make sure that the value that you're going to get from it is worth the price tag that you're going to pay for it. Because that just seems to be getting higher and higher, and it makes it harder and harder to realize that ROI.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the one of the best things that I've seen happening is the shift of whatever that demographic was, who they don't know what they need to do. Some people are better taking a year or two off, right? It's not, I need to go to school and I need to take a student loan out. So it's been great seeing that everyone, right? You go for the education, but for people that aren't sure, the only option isn't take out a student loan now, right? We're seeing a lot better career paths and avenues to the trades, which is great. We have a long way to go, but certainly agree.
Oh, absolutely. And technology is playing a huge part in that. A lot of these companies now, I think like YouTube, even like FedEx, and some of them are they're kind of building their own schools, right? They have like their own internal, which I think could be a huge benefit, not only for the companies themselves, but for the students, because it's completely up-to-date information. Another issue that we have with colleges is by the time everything is approved for curriculum, it's almost outdated now because of technology. I mean, you would probably know that better than anyone else, being in a technology field, right?
It's wild. And when you think about a lot of the big contractors, so we'll kind of get into, Schedule Engine a little bit down the road, but the founder of Schedule Engine, Austin Haller, second generation. What Haller's done really over the past year or two has been creating Haller University, which is a way to give back and give people that avenue into the trades. Yeah, people like Isaac up in Rochester, New York. And I think it's Jimmy Hiller, the team down at Hiller in Nashville. Do you know those guys?
No, I don't think so.
In Tennessee. They the name of their tech school is escaping me, but probably within the last year, they put out this really awesome video where they show kind of two parallel paths of what the trades can offer compared to the college degree. And they just do a really good job of using video and modernizing that for, the growing demographic. So yeah, it's kudos to those companies that are creating these tech schools and these avenues to train and educate.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, because it's the perception thing, right? So I love hearing about that because, one of the things that people say is, well, the average salary of somebody who didn't go to college is X amount, right? And the trades are often grouped into that because you go to trade school or you become an apprentice or whatever, but being in the trades is not the same thing as, and no offense to anybody on this, but it's not the same as bagging groceries or working at a fast food, joint or any of these entry-level jobs, right, into the workforce, but they're all being grouped together and this average is coming down. So that really needs to be broken out into a third, or more category, because you're just not seeing an accurate representation of what the trades can offer.
Couldn't agree anymore.
So tell me about your first job after college then. How did, after graduation, what'd you do from there?
Yeah. So, work in construction and when I was working construction during, summers and weekends, it was general excavation, concrete, foundational work. And I thought that's what a contractor did. So when I went to school, really engineering, got a little bit of exposure there. And when I went to figure out what do I want to do next? How do I want to use this degree in education? I did have some internships throughout my college degree where I'd be in a lab, kind of like a big chemical processing lab, by myself all day, isolated in a clean room, and good, unique experiences. But could I do that every day for a living? No. And as I'm trying to interview and figure out like what to do with my engineering degree, it goes back to people, which has been a key theme for me in my career. A friend of mine got a job working for Carrier. And I'm like, all right, is that a freight transportation company? And he's like, no, Carrier, the air conditioning company. I'm like the window units here. And, I'm learning this all in real time. And I didn't formally apply for the position. So I went to school in Philly, or right outside of Philly. And I'm from New York, New Jersey. So all my friends are trying to get like jobs back up. And I'm thinking, okay, I want to make it back up to New York, New Jersey. So my friend gets a job at Carrier in the New Jersey office and says, hey, I know you didn't apply, but the team and the Philadelphia team was asking me if I had any friends that would be interested in interviewing for the Philly position. Like, yeah, I'll take the interview for an experience, thinking that it's going to be, a pretty formal thing. And the person that interviewed me, Joe Palmieri, really one of my first managers, a big influencer in my career. He told me to meet him at a diner. So I was like, okay, casual interview at a diner. We talked. He kind of explained what Carrier did. And the position I was applying for was a technical sales engineer. And I'm like, what does a technical sales engineer do? And really, in short, I like this idea because it was a way for me to use this technical piece, my limited experience to construction. And it sounded pretty cool being out of the office, being able to walk job sites and work with contractors. So that technical engineering niche was there. So it kind of checked the box. And the sales side, I always enjoyed talking to people, working with people, had a desire to kind of get back into this general business term. So technical sales engineer sounded pretty cool. Wasn't a formal interview. And he goes, okay, when can you come back? And it ended up being, over spring break or something. And we played phone tag, had another casual interview. and actually got the job offer pretty quickly after meeting some of the additional team. Quick job offer, sounded good, technical sales engineer, and kind of called the job search to a halt. And that was my first career. So what was really cool about working for Carrier, the first probably like 3 to 4 months. So Carrier back in the day had a lot of manufacturing up in Syracuse, New York. So for my first job, instead of just being kind of thrown into the day-to-day, they took new hires from across the country in this kind of technical sales engineer training program. And we went up to Syracuse, New York for 3 months to pretty much learn about air conditioning. And as, funny or as bland as that sounds, it was probably one of the coolest new hire onboarding experiences I had compared to any of my friends. I mean, classroom setting 8 to 5, learning what's the refrigeration cycle, what's the difference between a heat pump, a geothermal unit, different heat exchangers, chillers. And we certainly focused more on commercial, but it was just a really cool onboarding and training experience where I gradually got to learn, okay, wow, this is a pretty complex, complicated industry. They brought in a lot of people to give real world applications on how, as a technical sales engineer, yes, we're technically on the OEM side. We're a vendor, we're moving large commercial equipment, but we're working with building owners on energy lifecycle analyses, walking jobs with contractors, retrofit, new construction side, fit outs. And you're working with, MEP, mechanical engineering, MEP engineers on the design and the spec of the equipment. So it was a pretty unique experience that really kind of catapulted me into the industry. And as I slowly figured out kind of what's what and how do all these different pieces work together. Wow,
that's really, really interesting and really cool to hear. I didn't know that about Carrier, about how, their internal programs worked like that. Is it, I can't imagine that's what you were expecting, right? When you took the position?
No, I figured, okay, I'll learn on the job. I think maybe for the first week, they technically, you get to the job, you set up your desk, and then after that, went up to Syracuse. But yeah, like any kind of first time new employee would expect, I'm going to get my cubicle, they're going to set me up, and I'm going to learn on the fly. So the fact that, Carrier in this case invested in me, invested not only in my training to do my job as a sales engineer, but gave me that cushion of 3 months. Your job is to learn about, HVAC, the industry, refrigeration cycles, and be a true industry product expert, which was pretty cool.
Wow. So that whole initiation or training process was about 3 months long, 90 days?
Yeah, probably about 3 months long. Wow. From, June through June, July, well, maybe like 3 or 4. I think October was when I went back to Philly and jumped in my boots.
Wow. That says a lot. That's a huge investment in in a new person and a new employee. And that's gigantic. I think that's a testament to, what a lot of companies can accomplish in the trades, because, although I haven't heard specifically about Carrier's process, I have heard, different similar manufacturers in the industry train, and, some of the other ones, and, on the refrigeration side too, how they have kind of shorter, I never heard 3 months. I've heard like month and a half, 2 months at the most, but 3 months is pretty wild. 3 or 4, you said. So, that's pretty cool, because a big thing with a lot of people is lack of training. When they first start, kind of like you said, you were expecting to be thrown to the wolves, and, here's your cubicle, learn what you do, talk to this guy if you need help, so I think it's really huge that they were able to provide that kind of training and education from the ground up, it sounds like. You said you were learning all about refrigeration cycles and the operation of the actual equipment itself.
From the ground up, right? What's the supply? What's the return side? We think about, now I'll test myself too right here, different types of, compressors and heat exchangers, and what is, recovery heat applications. Like, it was deep. It was boot camp tested, competitive course. When we think about ductless and so this was probably close to 5-6 years ago, if I do my math right, whenever that was. But, 2-pipe VRF versus 3-pipe, and ductless was really emerging. Mitsubishi, right, was that big ductless player, and still is. That kind of woke up the market. So ductless was evolving. And what's the advantages in thinking about your typical, central air system to retrofitting a ductless, and ductwork and cost saving. So it was definitely, as you can probably sense by my the tone in my voice, it was competitive and exciting.
Awesome. So I bet that really inspires some confidence about what you are about to go out and do for the company.
Yeah, I could. So part of the job, right? Every day was different. Some days I might be working up quotes. Other days, when you think about relationships you created, contractor might call me up, one of my accounts, and say, "Hey, Ray, I'm going to check out this this older school in the Philadelphia school district. They have a bunch of old PTAC units or something, or fan coils. I want to walk the job, get some measurements." Being able to walk the job and have that confidence. Okay, let's look here. Only 2 pipes, so it was either it wasn't a dual coil. Let's look. Okay, there's fresh air cutouts and stuff. It certainly gave you the confidence and really taught you a lot about the industry, what contractors are doing every day. More on the commercial side again, but it certainly gave you the confidence to jump right in and get a taste.
Awesome. So let's fast forward a little bit toward the end of your career with Carrier. So where did you go from Carrier, and what made you make the switch?
Yeah, so while I was at Carrier, as mentioned, technical sales engineer really checked the box for me because it allowed me to utilize that engineering and also start getting a taste on sales and business. And what I had the opportunity to do, which was an awesome employee kind of scholar program, was covered by Carrier. I was accepted. I was able to go back at night and study business. So probably about a year into the job, I'd work a full day, and 2 days each night from 6 to 9 on weekends, I just put myself through school, studied business, and got a taste of that. Through that, going back, met a gentleman named Austin Haller, and you can kind of start seeing where the pieces are connected. I mean, Josh, like, we were in a set cohort of 30 people in this business program. The other 28, pretty much like banking, marketing, your typical kind of industry you'd expect. So we get to talking, you're shaking hands, meeting. Hey, what do you do? My family comes from a big contracting company out in South Central PA. Oh, I work for Carrier, the industry. So right off the bat, we became good friends. We were kind of the only 2 people from what I'll call the general construction industry, and that was kind of the onset of how some additional pieces unfolded. So throughout that, we became good friends. They were actually through no credit of my own, as much as I'd love to take it. They went on to actually rep Carrier through that process. So we continued to know a lot of the players and work closely together through a lot of projects. We chose to team up. And ironically, on one of our last projects, as you can imagine, all the typical buzzwords like innovation, it's like, hey, how can each of you bring innovation back to your job and your place of work? So I'll never forget, part of our presentation when Austin went was talking about how in our industry, there's a lot happening from like outside tech companies trying to invest in, but this Uberization model is going to catch on. And homeowners, facility managers are going to expect and need an easier way to schedule, book, and track appointments. And there's kind of 2 options, right? Contractors can move first and find a way to do it organically through their own branding, or the market's going to do it to them, as we've learned from like Amazon, Netflix, what happened to Blockbuster, and really what Uber did to the taxi industry. So fast forward, we're good friends. Austin gives this project. We're graduating together. And at that point, my now fiance at the time, we were dating seriously. I was in Philly and she was up in New Jersey, New York. I was exploring opportunities, whether it was within Carrier to potentially start making my way up north. But Austin invited me for a beer, flipped the laptop, and gave me this pitch. It was called Fix Now Pro. Was his first iteration of this idea, but it was a means for contractors like his family business, Haller Enterprises, to catch on to this technology trend and find a way to offer better customer experience through modern online booking and tracking solutions. So he told me that, and my first thought was, whoa, like this seems like a lot. Like the idea, but I got a good, safe job, safe salary, really start into the past 3-4 years I invested in working a lot of accounts from the ground up. I'm starting to see some commission checks for the first time, right? And it's exciting. And I'm building these relationships. And ultimately, as you can see from the logo on my quarter zip, I really believed in what Austin was doing. And what I'll tell you, Josh, it was the people involved. So Austin Haller, friend, founder, CEO of Schedule Engine, genuinely good person. And we're 3 or 4 years later, we're continuing to innovate and do more stuff, but I would have followed him anywhere. Eddie McFarlane. So Eddie McFarlane was a co-founder of Schedule Engine, and you're laughing. So I actually first met Eddie rewind a year, we're in the middle of the business program, and we started doing for course credits consulting for a nonprofit located in downtown Lancaster, where Haller Enterprises is located. And who else was volunteering their time in this nonprofit? Good old Eddie McFarland. So before I even knew Eddie's background, his experience starting as a service tech and really growing into, management and the exec level at Haller Enterprises, which is over 425 employees, 6 branches. I knew Eddie as a person first and through this nonprofit consulting. So when Austin gave me this idea, I'm like, okay, I got you, Austin. And then Eddie was involved. It was like, all right, how can I pass this up? So once I understood the business model more, understood how everything I learned wouldn't be thrown out the window, this is kind of a next chapter for me to continue to work more closely with contractors. And my first step was actually coming over to Haller Enterprises. Schedule Engine wasn't a name yet. So the pitch was, I think we're onto something here. I want you, based on what we did together in the business program, to kind of be point person, this special projects type division at Haller Enterprises, and let's scope this thing out and figure out if we're onto something. So really tough decision for me. Carrier was extremely well. Names like Joe Palmieri, Tim Green, Jim O'Donnell, like I can name my whole office, like Suzanne Donovan, Dan DeSantis, Dan Matt, like just an awesome veteran team to learn from. They taught me a lot about the industry. So tough decision. Made the jump over technically to Haller Enterprises next with my contractor hat on. And we really set out to figure out how can we solve this customer experience problem, like for contractors by contractors, as corny as that sounds.
No, that is wild. That's cool. And I really like that you said that, because I was going to ask you, what ultimately led you to make the leap, but you beat me to it, and you said the people. And, that's why I was laughing when you said Eddie McFarland's name, because anybody who knows Eddie knows how awesome of a guy he is. And I don't personally know Austin, but I've heard about him. His reputation precedes him, and I think I met him briefly on that virtual trade show thing that we were doing. But that's a really wild story, and I think could resonate with a lot of people, because ultimately, kind of what you're talking about is the type of risks that a lot of people are looking to take these days. I mean, it's the challenge, right? It's looking at something saying, wow, this could really be something. I'm surrounded by a great group of people. Why not? This is, if I'm going to do something like this in my lifetime, let it be now, right? So that is pretty wild. So how did it come to be then how did it get from just a little division of Haller to Schedule Engine?
Yeah. So literally what happened was, and I'm going to coin one of Eddie's lines soon, but as you can imagine, setting out to do this at Haller Enterprises. And if you were building something, right, what would you want to do next? I'd probably want a bigger data size. So part of the conversation early on was, hey, we're drinking our own Kool-Aid here, but let's get some external validation from other contractors that, like, is this a real problem we're solving for? And some feedback that could help shape our scope of work. So we went out to a few non-competitors, whether it was the similar software groups Haller had, but really utilizing Haller's connection to other contractors across the country, non-competitors, went out and flat out said, hey guys, want to be super transparent. This is what we're working on. Here are the problems we've experienced to date. And here's Eddie's line. Are we crazy, right? There's probably like 5 really key contractors early on that helped shape our roadmap when we said, guys, are we crazy? And they said, you are not crazy. We're experiencing the same damn thing. And at that point, we knew we were onto something. And from there, it became, okay, this isn't just an isolated problem at Haller. And as we took a bigger look at the market, really led and pioneered by Austin and Eddie, what's our niche? What's a niche we can nail? There's a lot of awesome dispatching softwares to run the business, and we probably have like over 100 different names logged in our system. So there's a ton of options for contractors to run their business on the back end. Likewise, there's a ton of awesome options to build a website and drive traffic. And we realized there was a gap is there's really no platform focused on the customer experience, entirely on online booking, web chat, like this all-in-one solution that could allow contractors to go from, okay, I need to pick up the phone and call you today, right? It's going to be a game of phone tag. That's typically the only avenue contractors offer. How do we use our phones today? We're ordering food online. We're glued to our phones. We can order everything online, and we get it's contractor, HVAC, electrical, a lot more complicated. It's not just a set 30-minute window like your hairdresser, but guys, contractors, industry, you guys got to figure out if they're coming to your website, your Facebook page, and they want to book, why make it any more difficult? And we as an industry have to figure out how to make solutions like online booking and web chat work for us. So that's really where we nailed the niche and set out to do.
Wow, that is wild. So my first question in that, just because I'm genuinely curious, are you more focused on residential than commercial with this platform?
Yeah, so Carrier, I was really on the commercial side. Coming over here, one of the biggest things I still had to understand is, and take a step back. So Carrier commercial, as you can imagine, like a lot of new construction projects where we're speccing new equipment, and certainly did a lot of like renos, and typically I deal with things 25 tons and above, but got to know the residential market a bit. So when I came over to Haller, who Haller honestly does, they're probably 50-50. Commercial is more new construction, but the other 50% residential is all service replacement. This world of like residential service replacement, I was like, whoa, what is this? You guys got to tell me you're solving for, you got 100 technicians, and the job is to figure out how efficiently you can get each technician to a home each day, maximizing, reducing unnecessary return trips. That art and science of residential dispatching blew my mind, and it still does to this day. So that was my first kind of exposure. And yes, to answer your question, I'd say coming to market, Schedule Engine, when you think about like that homeowner relationship, has a bit of a better story to tell, higher frequency for residential service calls, but we also have dedicated commercial customers, right? When you think about that facilities manager, he's managing RTU 1, 2, 3, 4, AHU 1, 2, and his job is keeping track of what service calls are on what, where my technicians are, and when something's broken, whether they don't feel like picking up the phone or there's no service on the floor, being able to book an appointment from their smartphone is a pretty cool value add, especially when you're trying to sell some commercial maintenance contracts, right? But yeah, certainly residential primary, but we're quickly learning that commercial has arguably just as compelling a story.
Well, eventually, I think that the commercial sector is going to catch up technology-wise with the residential, just because it's all people, it's human behavior. And, we're seeing kind of like what you were saying with the residential. I could totally see how a homeowner would pick up their phone, they'd want to schedule it just like they want to, they don't want to call for a pizza anymore. They want to order it off the app, and they don't want to call a taxi anymore. They order an Uber. It's the same thing, but obviously commercial, there's a little bit more, there's more steps involved usually because of the hierarchy and everybody else that's involved. So how do you, or even if you've gotten to this point yet, how do you integrate with, like, say, the service channels, the Corrigos, these work order management platforms that a lot of these facility managers are using for their businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. What we realized early on, the market is so fragmented when it comes to that core dispatching software. And a lot of the assumption was, okay, they are what they are. A lot of them were, I don't want to use the word older, like a lot of them are legacy and not necessarily architected for integration. Thereby, it is impossible. And our kick-ass development team really challenged that and found out, no, it's not impossible. It's hard, which is why no one's done it to date. So every dispatching software is different. Two companies, right? Ray Heating and Cooling, Josh HVAC could use that same software completely different. So early on, we needed to build Schedule Engine to be minimally invasive and extremely nimble to whatever that FMS or that dispatching software is. Because you go in and you start talking to a contractor, hey, yep, I get online booking, I get appointment tracking, I get web chat, virtual service is cool, but you're telling me I got to retrain my office staff. There's something else my team has to do, and you're going to disrupt my techs in the field. Like, talk to you tomorrow. So that was one thing we needed to know. How can we do stuff to fit into existing workflows, not add more work and not add more process? So to your question, Josh, what we do is we just get a baseline. We have enough contractors on board to say, hey, when you're thinking about booking appointments, what information do you need to capture, right? Not what's nice to have, like what do you need to capture to intelligently get the right tech to the job, just like you would do over the phone. And we program an online interface to essentially capture that same information and create the right work order, a ticket in the system So from a dispatcher, whether it's coming from my awesome CSR call centers, some customers will always prefer to call in. It's not an if or. And for that increasing demographic that prefers online booking, they can do it on their couch at 10 o'clock at night, whether a job comes in online or from a CSR, like it looks the same and I'm assigning the right tech just as I do today. So that's how we kind of fit into the booking workflow. After that, like you would imagine, some contractors, the CSRs call when the technician's heading to the job site. They'll know to call the facilities manager. Other times, the technician's picking up the phone, trying to call the facilities manager when they're on their way. And why do we call? Because a lot of times we need site access, whether it's a big, whether it's a hospital or something, you can't always get on site. So when we think about these communications, most people don't argue with this. A CSR's time should be spent better, or a dispatcher, than just playing phone tag or trying to just call someone that we're on the way. If you want that personal connection, great. Feel free to give them a phone call too, but there's a reason text messaging, some of that stuff works because it's more efficient and 99% of texts are read. So if we can communicate a little bit more efficiently, and if we know, okay, this company on commercial side's using software A, SAMPRO Data Basics or something, they typically have status updates that the office is using anyway when the technician's traveling, when they're on site. So we kind of say, what is the best accurate means of what are you updating? Typically these statuses, and we can use those as triggers to let the facilities manager know, hey, I got 5 open dispatches or work orders. Great. RTU2, I can see this technician's on the way. What's my next job? These are scheduled for the next 3 or 4 days out. Awesome. And they have all the information where they need it. So we need it to configure to each company's workflow.
That's wild. The whole time you're talking, I can't help but think if a fraction of the people out there knew that a path in the skilled trades could lead to something like this, I think a lot more people would be interested, because this is just, I talk a lot about the different trajectories that the skilled trades offer, and something like this is like almost like a trades adjacent or that serve the trades, but the path through the trades often leads to something like this, which is unbelievable because, you're solving a real problem and you're doing it in a way that is all backed by technology, which is kind of on that pedestal still right now, right? Everybody wants to be involved with technology on some level, at least the coming generations, I should say. So it's just really wild how your journey kind of led you through all the way to here, where you're building something brand new that's going to serve the entire industry. Commercial, residential, I'm assuming industrial, the whole 9 yards, and it's just, it's amazing, and that's really wild, and I hope you're proud of what you're doing because it's really important work.
No, Josh, that's much appreciated. Your kind words. And what's been challenging for me, to be real with you, is learning the industry and being, learning from guys like Austin Haller and Eddie McFarland. Like I've challenged myself to think, what is my unique perspective? And over time, I've realized like I can call BS. I didn't grow up in the trades. Like, I'll be real, right? Like, I didn't grow up in the trades. I didn't start as a service technician. I appreciate that work, but I don't come from that world. I did happen to go to college. I did study engineering. I do study business. I've enjoyed consumer psychology, consumer trends and whatnot. And I kind of have this unique perspective where, okay, like I get the trades. I get why other technology solutions don't work because they force contractor to do stuff. So I can raise the BS flag, but by the same token, I get the technology side. I'm attracted to that side. And I feel like it's allowed me to have somewhat of a unique perspective that I'm hopeful, whether it's, younger service managers or people considering the trades can understand. Like there's so much opportunity in this industry, and technology is only going to play more and more of a part, whether it's, using technology at trade schools to train and, educate upcoming technician certifications, or like one thing we're doing too, which you probably picked up from the webinar. And it's funny, again, it was the webinar, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. So a lot of this is a nice raw conversation of us getting to know each other. But one thing we realized, and we were doing this for a handful of contractors, and coronavirus happened. And what happened? Customers don't want people in the home, and not every technician can get on site. We had a skilled labor shortage coming into coronavirus, so everything's just further exacerbated. And what we were doing for a select few contractors was providing this virtual service for them. If their technicians were in the field and they needed some extra bandwidth, we were actually hiring in our own remote expert technicians that could triage calls for them, hopefully like weeding out some nuisance calls and giving them some extra bandwidth. So like I say, coming into summer right now, most demand contractors, they want to offer same day, next day service. What happens? Weather's starting to get warm. You start booking out, right? And you don't want to lose that customer. If you book them a week out, they might still shop around and book more. So if they call in and it even sounds like it could be a battery replacement and whatnot, and you don't want to, send one of your techs there because you're trying to prioritize your field labor. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, we're going to get you booked for next Tuesday. I know that's 5 days out. So would you actually like the ability to speak with an expert technician? And that's actually a service schedule engine offers on behalf of the contractor. So I only explain that to say what inevitably happened from this business model is we hired for a new breed of technician. We have expert technicians on staff full time that only do this remote service work. And it's not the traditional retiring or, knees aching type of tech facing out of the field. It's actually a lot of times younger techs who we make sure most are NATE certified, but they have field experience. And on top of that, they're just really good with technology and able to use solutions like FaceTime and or a phone call to walk a homeowner or facilities manager through something with their own hands. So I bring that up to say, Josh, we're even seeing just these new positions being created left and right for up and coming generation who might be really attracted to technology. And there's only going to be more opportunities like that in the trades as companies and, XOi, they do some awesome stuff too, right? What they do is awesome. So I could go on for hours, but there's going to be a lot of really cool opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And, you kind of briefly mentioned it, and I think it's important for people to know, the impact that this could have. But you had mentioned, kind of technicians that are on the brink of retiring, they're getting older, their knees start to hurt, climbing ladders all day, This is what you're mentioning now is a real way to not necessarily close the skilled trades gap, but buy us a little bit more time, right? Because they can be used in several different ways, and we've started doing that here at Windy City as well. But the technicians that do say, "Hey, I'm just done. I'm done climbing ladders, but I don't want to stop working." It is wildly beneficial to be able to put them behind a computer screen, and most of it is pretty simple technology at the, when you get down to the bare bones of it and how to communicate in real time, like you're talking about, and to put them, behind a screen, and assign them like a younger apprentice or a younger junior technician, something like that. It's really accelerating that learning process. And getting more people interested because they have a support system. We talked earlier in the podcast about, when you're tossed into a job, thrown into the wolves, it's a new career. Often that training and support isn't there, and that's a huge issue for some people. But with this new emergence of the technology, it's creating situations where we don't really have to worry about that anymore. The more and more this stuff gets adopted.
And I'm so glad you brought that up because not enough companies realize that. And the first time I actually heard your name was through communications with Aaron, the CEO over at XOi. And I think XOi helps a lot of contractors utilize their existing, technicians to educate, because with the skilled labor shortage, I was talking to a contractor, Clay's Climate Control, out in New Jersey, and they were saying, like, listen, when we get people through the job, we're trying to get them in the field ASAP. With summer coming up, we don't have the luxury of setting them up to Syracuse for 3 months like I did, right? Like, we got to put them in the job. And the risk is if a technician can't work because their knees and they're phasing out for whatever reason, which is life, you don't just lose that employee, you lose all the tribal and the industry domain knowledge they have. So not only is that a benefit to helping the younger technicians, giving them that support system, but it's also a way for you to retain and transition a lot of that industry, company specific tribal knowledge. And I think we all agree the fear is we kind of had that skilled labor gap. So as we have kind of veteran labor force gap, younger force, if we transition too quick, there's going to be a huge knowledge gap as well. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, it can be utilized in so many different ways. And I think it's important that people really understand, try to wrap their minds around, what the industry is going to look like 5, 10, 15 years from now. It's definitely going to be advanced beyond our wildest dreams, and it's thanks to the work that you and Austin and Eddie and Aaron over there at XOi, you guys, are doing some just incredible work for the industry, really pushing it forward and moving the needle, as they say, which is just, fantastic. And I'm really taken back by it. I love technology. A lot of my staff hates me for it, but I absolutely love it. And I'm always looking for ways to improve, to stay ahead of the curve, and simplicity is big for me too, because I have a lot of stuff that I implemented here, and you do all these little things to make all these improvements. And before you know it, you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, how did I make it that complex? And now we're starting to see that issue surface and people being able to tie it all together to bring back that simplicity, because 5, 6 years ago, really, it was still, a lot of companies were still on paper invoices. Nothing easier than that. Here you go. Here's your price. Here's your description. That's your bill. You pay it, and now we're just, we're moving in all these different directions, which is great. But, a lot of the older generations, that are still in the workforce are struggling to grasp a lot of it. Most of them do pretty well, but a lot of them really do struggle with the amount of technology that's being implemented now.
Yeah. And technology could be its own thing, but as I bluntly told you when we got the team up together for the webinar schedule I did with XOi, I was fanboying out. I've known your name for a while. Just like things happen, our paths got to meet. Super excited to be on the podcast here today. And coming from the guy that automated his own podcast booking, we talked about that beforehand, man. Between the Calendly and the automatic download sheet, there's no question that you're a technology driver. So it's super cool to be here, and this has just been a really solid conversation.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that being said, I do have one more question for you. I love to ask everybody. I want to know, and because my big thing, my ultimate mission or my mission statement with Blue is the New White really is being able to allow people to succeed in ways that they didn't know existed by their own definition, because everybody has their own definition of success, right? That's why I'm not a huge proponent of the college degree the way that it's pushed now, just because, it's not a universal definition of success. It could be one person's, but not another's. And, I think that the more we can kind of separate that, the more people can succeed in their own way. So anyway, that being said, I want to know what your definition of success is and how the trades have helped you achieve it.
Yeah, that's a great question. As you're finishing that question, 3 words jumped into my head: fulfillment, process, and kind of results. And I think, and that just off the cuff, big rule of 3. No matter what you're doing, there's got to be that fulfillment element. No matter what you're doing, you need process and structure to get there. And no matter what you're doing, you need to produce results. And I think if I'm just talking arbitrarily about what success is, it's got to have the fulfillment, the process, and the results. And when I think about the trades, I wanted to, or initially part of kind of going into engineering too, I went through a phase of where I was really attracted to the medical industry. And I like this idea of helping people and finding fulfillment. And ironically, what I found about our industry is small businesses to big businesses, right? There is just so much opportunity here when you think about the lives, the individual families that you can impact just by using technology to modernize and improve your experiences, right? For many business owners, small businesses, big businesses in this industry, the conception to this point has been like, technology's been done to us. And it's almost been this resistance to adopt, and people mistake in that and think our industry's behind when it comes to technology. And it's no, we just haven't had opportunities to do it in the right way that empower us and impact our businesses. So when you're asking me about what success is, it's got to be fulfilling work. You need to figure out a process, and you need to produce results that meet your expectations. And when you think about this industry, for lack of better words, the ability to impact people using technology that's been undervalued and underappreciated is just extremely fulfilling work in itself. And the stereotypes about technicians, the stereotypes about contractors are just so wrong. I mean, what's the stereotype about a technician? They're going to show up late. They're going to be grumpy when they get to their door. And what we realize here is it takes a hell of a person to leave their family in the middle of the night to go provide heating and cooling for another family. When it's dark out, there's icy roads and shit. So while I'm starting to ramble at the top of this hour here, that's my definition of success. And I threw in a bonus tidbit of why I feel that there's so much room and opportunity for success in this industry.
That's awesome. Ray, thank you so much for your time today. Why don't you go ahead and tell people where they can find you, how they can find Schedule Engine, all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys want to reach out, I'm on LinkedIn, search Ray Clark, Schedule Engine. My email, as easy as it sounds, Ray, RAY, @scheduleengine.com. And I'll even do this because I'm feeling like it. If you guys want to reach out, give me a call or text, 717-278-5573. If you guys want to hit me up on the cell phone too. So 717-278-5573 on the cell. Ray @scheduleengine.com, and feel free to add and message me on LinkedIn. So that is how they can get in touch with me.
Awesome. Well, Ray, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, awesome, Josh. Great chatting. Great getting to speak more, and looking forward to our next conversation.
Absolutely.